Hey guys, ArchieLuxury channel. And today I want to talk about the passing of a president. We're talking about the former president Bush Sr., who recently passed away at 94. And I got to tell you, I saw a video by Christian at Theo and Harris. And I got to tell you, I think Christian absolutely 100% nailed it. He put a video together where he talks about the watch being far more than just a symbol as a watch, but as a collector of memories, as a something which has a special power. And the late president had a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, which just a absolute masterpiece of a watch. And I got to tell you, there's no point reinventing the wheel when somebody has nailed it. And I sent Christian a quick email and said, hey, I really loved your video. Do you mind if I use a bit of it? And he very graciously said, oh, that's great. Yeah, sure, feel free. So I do want to say a very, very special thank you to Christian for letting me use this footage. And I just want to say, Christian, I think you damn well nailed it. And whilst, you know, in Australia, the Republicans, the Democrats, it's a different political system. Australia is a bit like Canada. But I must say, the Bushes, you know, I think what you said was just perfect. You didn't want to get into politics. You just wanted to remember a president and respect for the office of the president. And let's take a look at Christian's video. He's nailed it. And I think, by the way, guys, Christian, Theo and Harris run a very cool watch shop in New York. If you're down in New York, check it out. I'll put a link in the video down below, and a link to Christian's YouTube channel. And thank you, Christian. He's let me use this footage. Take a look, guys.
What is up, Watch fam, and happy Tuesday. Today, we're going to be celebrating the life of the 41st president of the United States of America, George H.W. Bush, and specifically the Patek Philippe on his wrist. Let's do it. Okay, before we get into this episode, I'd like to do a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing a vintage Cartier tank. Beautiful example with not a lemon dial, but actually a gold dial, something that is quite rare to find. We list watches like this, Cartier tanks, particularly because of the value they represent. They fit into my personal style and what I like to curate so well, into the watch shop at theoandharris.com. This watch actually does kind of remind me of the topic for today because it is so old world, right? It is so mid 20th century. You know, it reminds me of, you know, Jack Kennedy and Andy Warhol and all the great American influences, right, and icons of that era, like the Greatest Generation, like our 41st president, George H.W. Bush. How do we segue into this topic? I think it's very important that we hosted this special episode, this Tuesday episode. It is an extra piece of content for the week, but when Anna brought up the idea about celebrating HW, and specifically the Patek Philippe on his wrist, because the conversation is so important. And no, this conversation isn't going to be a political one. I, like so many of you, am not in the position of authority to have a political debate. It's not what I do, even in my private life. Nonetheless, business. Not the point today. The point today is to drive home something that sits at the core of Theo and Harris, right? The idea that watches consistently serve as vessels in our lives for memories and for people and for messages and for times past and present. If we allow them to, they have this almost supernatural, this super odd ability to represent so much more than the time. And if you're new to watches, if you're new to this channel, maybe you don't understand that yet. Maybe that isn't something that you've experienced. But I know to the watch geeks out there, what I'm saying hits home. Right? The watch itself is that vessel, is that totem, you know? And George H.W. Bush had one of the most beautiful and interesting totems, I think emotionally important wristwatches of any president. He had a Patek Philippe reference 5039J, a perpetual calendar in yellow gold. It's powered by their automatic winding 240Q movement. This complicated piece displays not just the time, but the day, the month, and the moon. It's a crown jewel of watchmaking. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend you take a closer look at the perpetual calendar complication as a whole, and this is a wonderful example of it. With its hobnail bezel, it's a bit more formal and old school than its more popular brother, the 3940, and it's definitely a little bit more isolating in its design, but nonetheless, it is a perpetual calendar Patek and a precious metal. Watches don't really get much better than what HW wore. And it's important to note that, right? That the watch that he wore truly is, like I said, a crown jewel of watchmaking, but that's not what impacts me. I see expensive watches all the time, right? I have friends and colleagues and clients with $1 million in watches, right? And it's no longer, at least for me, the dollar amount. And this watch trades between $30,000 and $40,000. It's no longer the dollar amount or the complication that, you know, just hits you, right? That takes your breath away. It's the stories and it's the nuances, right? And if you don't already know the story of George H.W. Bush's Patek Philippe, it's very short, but it's very impactful. Whoever gifted it to him, which is unknown, put an inscription on its closed case back. An inscription that read, "Happy 100th birthday, marked June 12th, 2024. And it's that inscription that changes what makes it special from its technical supremacy as a complicated Patek Philippe to its message, to its meaning. It's a statement of admiration for Bush's strength. It's a bet that this American leader would one day celebrate his 100th birthday. And there wasn't a doubt. So much so that it's already inscribed and we're already celebrating. And no, HW did not live long enough to realize this prophecy, passing away just the other day at 94. But the truth, his strength, his perseverance, it remains. He was a father of 5, a grandfather of 13, and whether you're a Democrat or Republican, which is to me irrelevant, the man was a civil servant and will be remembered as such. He instilled the importance of political involvement and public servitude into the foundation of his family. And it is only just that we recognize and feel grateful for that service. It's an issue that is bipartisan, something that we can all get behind. So, bringing it back to watches, this to me is a perfect example of how messaging and meaning can overshadow even a piece that is truly tremendous, right? My grandfather's Omega Seamaster is a fraction, a small fraction of the watch that HW's yellow gold Patek Perpetual is and will always be. But the truth remains. What we ultimately value when the dust settles is not the material. There is nothing I like to spend money on more than a great watch. But that is not because of their precious metal or technical supremacy alone. It's because they have an otherworldly ability to connect us to the people and memories and times that we love and might one day miss. That's what makes watches so special. Love him or hate him, I genuinely don't care right now. That is not the point of this conversation. Please refrain from political debate in the comment section. Let's all talk about watches and what they mean to us. I can't wait to read your stories. Thanks so much for watching. That's it. Have a good day, guys.